Misconceptions that people put across every time in regards of sugar is that natural sugar is healthier than the synthetic sugar, that the table sugar that is coming from the industries is actually way worse than the sugar that we're eating in sugarcane. This is somebody who you will simply understand that the biochemistry lessons actually escaped his mind for a reason. Sugar is sugar regardless of the source. The body does not understand natural or synthetic. The body does not understand brown or white. The body does not understand those colors. The body does not even understand that this is ugali coming from sorghum and this is ugali coming from maize, or this ugali coming from an industry. The only difference possibly from the one that is coming from the industry is it could have added ingredients that can actually destroy you faster than the others. But the end result will be the glucose. So let me take you to this sugar so that you can actually understand what I mean when I talk about sugars. Okay. So number one, sugar is just a name basically to denote or to connote carbohydrates. So carbohydrates are what we call sugars. Now, when you consume any carbohydrate, the end result is not you absorbing that carbohydrate into the system. You will not absorb ugali, the brown ugali, into the bloodstream. You cannot measure brown ugali in the bloodstream. You cannot measure brown chapati in bloodstream. What is going to be measured after the consumption of this carbohydrate are three monosaccharides, the basic monosaccharides. One is galactose, two is glucose, and three is fructose. All right, these are the things that are absorbed into the bloodstream. Now, when you absorb glucose, let's say you've eaten ugali, you've eaten chapati or wheat products, you've taken the table sugar, you've eaten rice, you've eaten even the complex carbohydrates. But the complex carbohydrates can be consumed in small volumes or small portions. Why? Because they come in with the fiber that, one, is good for your gut microorganisms. They feed on the fiber, and in return, they can give you B vitamins, or they can help you in digestion to protect you from malnutrition and constipation. Okay. However, the end result of these complex carbohydrates will still be glucose. The only beauty is that the fiber holds on to the glucose and the digestion process is taking a long period of time. Therefore, you will release glucose in blood in a stable and a gradual way. It will not be a spike. Our fight is against these spikes in blood of blood glucose. When you have those spikes, you're going to bring in the spikes of insulin, and those spikes will cause you insulin resistance in the long run. And that's what we are fighting. Okay, we want to release glucose in a steady flow in blood so that we end up utilizing it appropriately, and that's why we are also acting in terms of doing the activities. So anyway, you've consumed ugali, complex carbohydrates, rice, wheat products, and whatever is coming from this at the end of the metabolism is sugar number one, glucose, the one that you measure on your finger. Now, glucose gets into the bloodstream and causes a spike in blood sugars, the glucose. And this spike, remember, this blood has a stable amount of glucose. There's a stable range of glucose that is called the normal range of glucose, beyond which we call it, on the higher side, we call it hyperglycemia. So now, this blood with high blood sugars, it will pass through the pancreas. And the pancreas is like the traffic police who has an alcohol blow to measure how much alcohol the driver has consumed. The pancreas, let's call it a sugar blow, right? So the pancreas has these measures or sensors that will detect that in blood we have high glucose levels. And this is going to hurt your eyes, your nerves, your brain, your kidneys. So what do? We need to bring it down to the normal level. So then the pancreas secretes insulin, the hormone. Now, insulin is the opener of the cells so that it opens up these cells, whether fat cells, liver cells, or muscle cells, to make sure that this glucose in blood flows into these cells. When glucose comes from blood into these cells, now blood glucose goes down. The unfortunate part is that insulin is a hypoglycemic agent. It takes blood sugars to below normal values, normal ranges. And now the body, as a result of adaptation, it has to send you back into cravings so that you bring in new sugars to actually boost the blood sugar levels. So you will never be in a stable state as you consume those simple carbohydrates. You're always taking sugars up to bring in insulin to take sugars down, to go into cravings to take more sugars, and this is the state that you're in. This is a very unstable state that actually ends up getting you into insulin resistance, and that is a problem. So that is glucose. So whether you've eaten brown ugali or white ugali, the end result will be glucose. So if you're already diabetic, you've been diagnosed with diabetes already, and you're on medication, or you're intending to prevent yourself from the outcomes or the complication of diabetes, or you intend to reverse diabetes, how then can you consume this ugali? How then can you simply ask if ugali is healthy? If ugali from the portion mill is better than ugali from the industries? How can you ask that question when you already know that your problem is coming in with this? All right, that is sugar number one. But this sugar number one has three fats. This is where it gets interesting. So glucose is converted to ATP. All right, this is where people tell you that if you don't eat carbohydrates, you will not have energy. That's a lie, because you can simply break down other components like fats, like amino acids and proteins to get glucose. So you don't have to rely on consuming carbohydrates to get glucose. All right, so now listen. So glucose is converted to ATP, energy. It's pumped into the muscle cells for activity. So that means you must be active to utilize what you're eating. Number two, sugar in form of glycogen is stored in the liver or in the muscle cells as temporary storage. In case you need it, you'll utilize it. That is glycogen. This glycogen holds on to a lot of water. That's why we end up getting edema later on when you get insulin resistance. It also holds on to a lot of potassium. That's how we end up having the arrhythmias, the increased heart rates, and problems in heart rhythms. Okay. Now, so glycogen is there awaiting to be consumed later on. But if you don't consume it, much of these sugars, both in blood glucose and glycogen, they are converted to fats and now pumped into the major store that is called the fat cells. These fat cells have the ability to expand to accommodate how much you're eating. And as they are expanding, that's where you start putting on weight. That's how you start putting on a lot of fat. And the body is storing this fat here. It knows that one day you will utilize this fat. So it's actually storing it here for a rainy day. There'll be floods, there'll be natural calamities. So you can actually utilize this. However, you constantly consume 5 meals a day. There is no calamities. And even if there is a drought or there's a flood, the government will still send you rice, still send you flour, all right, the unga, so that you can actually eat and continue the pattern of slavery. So as you eat, this is the time that the body was hoping that you can actually hold on to eating so that it can burn what you've stored. That's why fasting is very important. Fasting is not starvation. It's just you intentionally deciding, you know what, I have consumed so much, allow me to burn what I've actually stored. That's how you recover from these conditions. So you've stored it in fat cells, and now sugar is now in fats. And that's a problem because we are creating now a dump site in the fat cells. So those are the three fats of glucose. Fats put you weight and cause you insulin resistance. Glycogen for temporary storage so that you can utilize it later. And ATP for energy in the muscle cells.